everybody, my name is Jason Lake David Works Computing, and we thought it'd be a good idea to do a quick VMware update. Obviously, there's been some great announcements that happened over the last 6 months. VMworld, and just a quick show of hands, how many have been to the past VMworld? Okay, well, good. So this will be a beneficial presentation. Obviously, in 20 minutes or so, I'm not going to be able to cover everything. So we thought it'd be a good idea just to highlight some of what's new and really just focus on some of the key aspects of what vSphere 5 came out with, right? And then, if time permits, I can discuss some of the licensing changes, which I'm sure you've all been inundated with if you are running any sort of vSphere shop. Some changes that happened as well. I can certainly cover that if time permits and some of the packaging. So I thought I'd just kind of show this, just to show you these are some of what's new, and really what I'm going to present today is really a compilation of something, because really, holistically, this is a lot of just point solutions, but as you look, business continuity, right? That's one thing I want to cover. There's smarter storage solutions. You heard a little bit of what Tim said around some of the APIs and how you can expose storage up into vSphere. vMotion, some nice enhancements on that front. Virtual machines, enough said on that. I'll cover some details. And then some really nice appliances that have come out as far as enabling quicker, smarter deployments and solutions from that front. More efficiencies around deploying some of the VMware solutions. So that being said, the one thing I want to cover is business continuity, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this. And some of the things that you guys are all very familiar with from a local site perspective around local availability, right? vSphere HA, right? High availability at the local site, extremely powerful. Fault tolerant, I don't know how many of you are starting to leverage fault tolerance. That was a release from the previous, that was a feature that was released previously, extremely powerful for local availability. And then you have your vMotion and storage vMotion, right? vMotion, I'm sure everybody's aware of, recently storage vMotion, extremely powerful from a high availability from the local perspective. Data protection, vSphere data recovery, that's kind of a smaller shop capability for data protection. And then obviously Tim did cover some of the APIs as far as getting that enterprise API call into your vSphere environment for enterprise backup solutions. Okay. Then we get into the larger failover site, right, with Site Recovery Manager. And if you're looking at Site Recovery Manager or using it or considering using it, now is the time to really look at it, because it's really got some nice features that have come out that I'm going to discuss here shortly. And then something new here, vSphere replication, which really, in a nutshell, it's actually a new feature within SRM5. So it's part of the license bundle of SRM, but it's now considered. With SRM today, the enterprise version, you're looking at array-based replication, right? So you have to have similar arrays, you have to have array-based replication to leverage the enterprise version of Site Recovery Manager. vSphere replication is now host-based, is the best way to describe it, right? So you can have disparate storage systems and really geared around remote sites, right? So extremely powerful from a perspective of, your enterprise shop, you have large SAN arrays, you have a remote site, you want to get that SRM type capability, you can now do that, right, with host-based, right? So you're going out through the ESX hypervisor and leveraging it that way. Some limitations on that as far as RPO are concerned, but it is a nice solution for those smaller shops or just for getting SRM type capabilities to a remote site versus having to invest in large SANs at both sites, get that replication going from that perspective. So then I'm going to highlight some of the changes, right? So again, I talked about high availability, but that engine from the previous version has been completely wiped and rewritten. Right? There's like a 700-page manual out there that really talks about the changes in the SRM engine. And ultimately, there's some features in there such as more resiliency around the HA in the heartbeat, right? One of the keys that I saw that are extremely beneficial is now we'll leverage that storage network for validity of host availability, right? So before, you got your network heartbeat, hosts are you up, they're all communicating. If you have a glitch in that network, right, you could potentially have a false positive and HA kicks in and starts filling things over. It can be a big pain. Now it can leverage a backup. That data store is, in theory, always available, right? So if that's down, you have a problem. But it will leverage that network now for more resiliency in that HA itself, okay? A lot more usability features in the GUI, so you get a lot more status and updates of what the status of your HA environment is. So a lot of nice features that have been built in with the new HA capability. Again, data recovery, the deduplication capabilities. And again, this is kind of for their smaller business, but if you're looking for a quick backup solution, quick backup and restore solution, data recovery is now an enhanced and a very viable option. Site Recovery Manager. So when I said if you're looking at it, or have been looking at it, where you always, a lot of the issues that a lot of customers have is you can fail over, but failing back is not as easy, right? A lot of manual intervention to fail back. So you could hit that big red easy button to fail over your entire site. Automatic scripts would kick in, it would fail your VMs over, storage replication would be over there, it would turn the volume active, you can bring your site back on. When your primary site came available again, how do you get it back over? Now with SRM5, you can fail back, right? With that big red easy button, quote unquote. Okay. Another nice feature with Site Recovery Manager SRM5 is the fact that you can do planned migrations, right? So you can actually shut down VMs, migrate those VMs over to your DR site, right? In a planned scenario, synchronize the disk for that particular VM versus the whole automated script perspective. Okay, so some really nice features around SRM. And then again, I didn't talk about the vSphere replication, which is a brand new feature itself, and I think that's going to have a lot of potential for folks that are really looking at DR solutions that just don't have the infrastructure, the people, or the budget for the full license version. Okay. Storage, so I talked about smarter storage DRS. So if you're familiar with DRS from the VM perspective, right? Automatic moving of VMs based on capacity of the systems, utilization of the systems. Now we can do that at the storage level, right? Policy-based storage, right? So this coupled with the APIs, I have a slide on it briefly that I'm going to touch on, but those APIs that Tim was talking about. DRS, storage DRS with those APIs is extremely powerful now. Policy-based decision-making for where VMDKs are going to be placed, right? Versus the whole, I'm going to deploy a VM that's going to drop it on this data store that I have out there. I can pick it, right? Manually pick it when you go through the deployment process. But now you have intelligence built around it, the initial placement is based on space and idle capacity, but now you can load balance, right? Based on storage utilization. Is this storage subsystem or this data store over capacity versus this other one? It'll based on your policies, it'll move that to the underutilized storage subsystem, right? So it's kind of, you can start thinking about tiering your storage more intelligently, and that coupled with those APIs that we talked about, and I'll talk about a little bit, extremely powerful, because now we can see what that storage architecture actually offers, right? So you're looking at automatically moving resources around based on capacity and I/O, but also what the features and functions of those data stores are, because you could have completely disparate data stores underneath the hood instead of it as a fiber-based, different disk subsystems, et cetera, the list goes on and on. Just really bringing some smart storage into your virtualized environment. A lot of what you're used to today at the host level is now being brought down into the storage level. It's pretty powerful stuff. DRS also includes the affinity and anti-affinity rules, right? So oftentimes you want to keep VMDKs possibly on the same data store for certain reasons, but more importantly, you want to keep them on separate data stores, right? An example would be you have a VM that has multiple VMDKs associated with it, you're doing some sort of host-based replication. You're going to want to make sure those two VMDKs that are associated with that particular VM are on separate data stores to leverage the full benefit. There's a reason you're doing that, host-based replication for redundancy and availability. Another one would be the virtual machine, right? So when you have different VMs, you want those VMDKs to be on different data stores if they're providing some sort of functionality around availability, right? A domain controller is a simple example. You have a primary domain controller, you're going to be leveraging the DRS affinity rules or anti-affinity rules at the host, right? You always want them on separate hosts. Now you can leverage that at the storage level, right? The MDK for this particular domain controller is always going to be on a different data store to protect yourself, okay? Other reasons for that, right, is you have some sort of application that requires load balancing, right? So Tim brought up that Gartner comment, right? Your weakest link. is always the less available, most vulnerable piece of the architecture, right? So you're going to want to protect your application. So if you're load balancing across a bunch of web servers, you can apply these types of affinity rules so that these VMs are always going to be A, on different hosts, and B, on different data stores. Okay? Storage awareness, right? So that is, I'm not going to cover much of this just because Tim did cover it, but essentially this, again, coupled with the storage DRS, just brings a whole new light of storage capabilities within the ESX environment, right? Around, it's going to expose the architecture of the storage subsystems for you to leverage in a policy-based fashion, right? When you're provisioning resources within the ESX environment. vMotion. So vMotion, what I want to cover here is really just it's just getting better and better, right? Multi-NIC support. So now you can support up to 4 10 gigabit NICs, up to 16 1 gigabit NICs. You can basically now start leveraging the vMotion and start scaling much better as far as swinging VMs around amongst your hosts because of the scalability and availability that you get out of these multiple NICs, right? Start load balancing and doing more with what vMotion already, awesome feature of VMware, what it offers. Now it just gets better and better as far as how much you can do all at once, right? There's limitations obviously always in the kernel, but the bandwidth is just opening up more and more for you to do what you need to do from an enterprise perspective. Another enhancement to vMotion would be the SDPS, which basically says when you're trying to move a busy VM that's constantly turning the pages of memory, right, that will slow down a vMotion move, right? So now there's capabilities in there that send a pause to that OS so that the memory can catch up and vMotion can catch up to get that VM moved over to the other hosts. So it's really going to be eliminating a lot of the timeout issues that would occur in previous versions. And then another one I think is really important here is the 10 milliseconds of latency. Right, so wide distances, right, or slower networks, you can start avoiding those timeouts as well from a vMotion perspective. I believe the requirement before, or the best practice was, within a millisecond, right? Well, this is pretty significant for those that have multiple clusters spanning different sites, and you want to vMotion between them. That requirement has been lifted, right, to allow for vMotions to happen without timeouts, errors, etc., etc. Virtual machines. So bottom line here is they're just bigger and bigger, right? 32 virtual CPUs and a terabyte of RAM, right? That's 4 times what you could do in the previous version. I guess the bottom line with the size of these VMs is I think, what they're saying is virtualize your enterprise applications, right? There's really no limit from a size perspective with applications these days to virtualize. I think even in the previous version, the size limitation really, I don't think a lot of folks ran into, right? This is just basically saying that a very small percent of what maybe some applications required that hit that high watermark in previous versions has been relinquished here, right? 32 virtual CPUs with a terabyte of memory is huge, right? Now why, somebody say, well, why would you do that? That's going to engulf practically a whole server, right? But everything that I talked about as far as the storage capabilities, the availability capabilities, everything that you gain out of a virtualized environment, enabling you for the provisioning, et cetera, that's why you can do it, right? Not so much, well,